Are you ready? Hey, think you can tell us what to do?
Welcome, ladies and gents, to the most must-see podcast in wrestling history. Welcome to the PWC. I'm your host, as always, your mother's favorite, and we're talking all about AEW Dynamite Fyter Fest 2, Night 2 to be more exact. And listen, before we get into any of the reviews and anything, I just got to get something off my chest a little bit, and it annoys me tremendously that AEW is doing this. That they're giving every week a pay-per-view like name, if that makes sense. I mean, we had Road Rager, we had Fyter Fest Night 1, we've got now Fyter Fest Night 2, and then next week we've got Fight of the Fallen, all building up to the actual pay-per-view, which is going to be All Out coming in September. And now that's the thing though, it feels to me like it's a very cheap pop to get people to come and watch what essentially is a weekly episode of Dynamite. And I feel like as fans we are being cheated a little bit by giving these fancy names and stuff. And yeah, I know other companies have done it, but they don't do it every single week. I mean, NXT had In Your House, and then 2 weeks later they had the Big American Great American Bash, which is fine. It doesn't give the feel that it was supposed to be a major main event pay-per-view, you know. Whereas Fyter Fest last year was a pay-per-view. Fight of the Fallen is a pay-per-view last year, and now all of a sudden it's just a weekly episodic on Dynamite. But anyway, that's just my little gripe. If you guys agree with me or disagree with me, please leave a comment below and let me know what you guys think about that whole concept. Do you think it's a cheap pop, or do you think it's just nice that they give their weekly episodic episodes a name? Else, if you haven't done so already, subscribe, notify, tell your friends, parents, grandparents, lovers. Right here at PWC, we've got everything coming for you guys. With that being said, let's get straight into the review. And we start night 2 of Fyter Fest with the 5 labors of Jericho. It is his first labor, and that was to go against Shawn Spears in a match where Shawn Spears is only allowed to use a chair. Jericho is not allowed to use a chair, and Shawn Spears made sure he made use of that chair. Some bad shots to Chris Jericho's elbow, which was a clever little move because of the Judas effect. And then, it was well. We even had Tully Bookhart come through and cause a bit of a distraction. Sammy Guevara picked up that nonsense and cleared that up, caused a bit of a distraction. Jericho did get hit with, or attempted to get hit with a C4, but of course the Judas effect out of nowhere and knocked Shawn Spears out for the first count, and giving Jericho the first chapter of his labors. And with that, we also had MJF at the commentary booth as well. And after the match, got up and said, well done. Next week, though, at Fight of the Fallen, you've got to go through the second labor, and that is taking on Nick Gage. Now, for those of you that don't know who Nick Gage is, he is a hardcore legend in the business, a CZW veteran, and basically just involved in, if you can think of a more bloodier match, he's probably involved in it. And yeah, his match with Jericho will be a no disqualification match. So yeah, so far 2 good matches, or at least 1 good match so far we've had, and 1 potentially good match for the labors of Jericho, which I'm enjoying the storyline. The match itself, though, with Shawn Spears, it felt very disjointed. It felt like Jericho wasn't really in it, and it felt like Spears, there was so much anticipation for Spears coming into AEW, especially after his successful run in NXT as Ty Dillinger and his not so successful run on the main roster. Everyone was like, oh, this man deserves so much more, and he's really a great athlete. And listen, I'm taking nothing away from Shawn Spears. He is a good athlete. I just don't think he transcends as well as he should on a bigger stage. And I feel like he should be better than what he actually is right now, and I don't know why. It's almost like I felt like Rusev back in the day when he became Miro and he was thrown to that storyline of best friends with Kip Sabian and the marriage and all that sort of stuff, and then eventually he's now broken that mold and become who Miro should be, who Rusev should have been back in the day. And I feel like Shawn Spears is in that motion at the moment, and we just can't get to the proper Shawn Spears. I felt like the Pinnacle might help him, We're still waiting for that. As for MJF on the commentary, yeah. Look, I know I saw a lot of comparisons this week, especially between MJF and The Miz, and they're all saying MJF is better on the mic and all this sort of stuff, but I have to disagree there. I think The Miz specifically is a much better man on the mic than MJF, in the sense that MJF is fantastic on the mic, don't get me wrong, but he is a full-on heel aspect of a mic. If you want someone to be a full blown out heel and get himself over, MJF is your man. But to get other people over on the mic, he struggles a little bit with that, and we've seen it come out in the Chris Jericho feud. Jericho has been doing a lot of the getting over on his own part rather than MJF, whereas The Miz can basically get a potato over with the crowd. That's how good he is, in my opinion. You guys feel free to disagree with me if you want. Comments are there. Let it rip. But that's what I'm saying. Miz is a much better man on the mic than MJF, hands down. We then got the second match of the evening. Frankie Kazarian and the Elite Hunter taking on Doc Gallows in a one-on-one match. And obviously, Carl Anderson was at ringside with Doc, caused a bit of distraction and, causing a bit of chaos. Eventually, Doc Gallows picked up the victory, but we had the Elite come out and start beating up on Frankie Kazarian and the Elite Hunter. Hangman Page came out and did the save, but the numbers were too much, and then we had the Dark Order all come out as well, and it was just a full-out brawl between Dark Order and the Elite, building up for that Fyter Fest match next week. Fight for the Fallen match, sorry, not Fyter Fest match. It's basically Fyter Fest Fight 3. But anyway, the Fight of the Fallen match, which is going to be the Elite taking on the Dark Order and Hangman Page in a 5-on-5. If the Dark Order and Hangman Page win, Dark Order get a tag team match, and Hangman Page gets his AEW title match against Kenny Omega. And listen, this match was, well, I think the crowd destroyed this match for what it actually was, because you know what, they just were just there. They were. It felt like watching it on virtual TV. It felt like I was watching it in the Thunderdome with no sound effects, and I feel like it was a little bit. I felt like it was a bit unfair on the two guys. I think Frankie Kazarian and Doc Gallows put up a decent match. Probably not newsworthy match like Chris Jericho's Shawn Spears before, but they did put on a match which should have been a lot better received rather by the crowd, and it just wasn't. Even the aftermath with the Elite coming out and Dark Order coming out and Hangman Page, all of that, it didn't seem like to ignite the crowd anymore. And that's the one thing that we never talk about when it comes to live crowds, is how a live crowd can actually deflate an entire match just because they're not into it. And it really just proved the point here, because this match was a good match. And in any given night, if we had a hot crowd, this probably would have been a 5-star match, how good they were. But because of the crowd bringing it and just sucking it, you could feel the athletes in that ring not give 100%, because why must they give 100% when the crowd's not giving them that energy to fight back? We moved on to the third match, and coming off a hot coffin match last week, Darby Allin went against Wheeler Yuta in the match, being accompanied by the best friends Orange Cassidy and Sting, obviously ringside with Darby Allin. And listen, what essentially was an above average match, I guess. It was a good match. The highlight had to come in with Orange Cassidy and Sting's interference, and that is a very sad thought, because the match itself was good, but when you watch this match and you're going to watch it again and again, the only thing you're going to remember is the Orange Cassidy freshly squeezed offense style against Sting, and Sting replying it, you know what I'm talking about, the hands in the pocket and tap on the shins. Sting did the exact same thing back to Orange Cassidy. It was a fun little interaction, and I think that's what we're going to remember around it. The match itself, Darby Allin picked up a victory over Wheeler Yuta. I didn't have any other expectations. I knew Darby was going to... You can't have him win a coffin match and then make him lose to a guy like Wheeler Yuta, who has zero momentum currently in AEW. And again, I'm not sure the concept of this match. Is it maybe to introduce a bit of a feud between Allin and the best friends? I'm not 100% sure where this is going. Maybe it's just a once-off match just to have Orange Cassidy and Sting mix it up. Maybe we might even get Orange Cassidy and Sting in the ring soon. But yeah, not much else to report on this match. Just a solid, good wrestling match, but overshadowed by Cassidy and Sting. Moved on to the first of two championship matches at AEW Fyter Fest Night 2. And this was the women's match, the AEW Women's Champion Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, taking on NWA's Nyla Rose. And listen, let's be honest, this match was as good as it should have been. And yeah, look, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of Nyla Rose. I think she's got a great future coming up in there, especially now with the news that came in right after Fyter Fest that she's officially signed with AEW and not part of NWA. And we've got a whole story about that coming up in the rumor mill, which should be up a bit later on. So make sure you guys check that out there, all regarding AEW and Impact and NWA. Sorry, those other three. Yeah, so just something there we got to talk about, but we're not going to talk about it now. We'll talk about it later. Talking about this match, though, Britt Baker picked up the victory and retained the AEW Championship after a great little lockjaw move. That I love that move. I think it's a fantastic move. However, this is probably not the best match Britt Baker's had, and it's also definitely not the best match Nyla Rose has had. And I think honestly, Britt Baker is a much better promo worker than she is a ring worker. And I think that's starting to show in her matches. Her defense title matches have shown that she's more... She can put up a good fight. You know, she can talk a good fight, but she can't fight a good fight. And that's, I think, it's the hands thing. You can see Nyla Rose had to work extra in this match just to get Britt a little bit more over. And I'm taking nothing away from Britt Baker. I love her as a wrestler. I think she's fantastic. And I think she maybe just needs a little bit more in-ring training when it comes to that sort of stuff. And I think that is one of the big talking points about Britt Baker. If they're trying to put a whole entire division around her, I don't think she is the lady to pursue this. I will be surprised if she continues holding the title after All Out, whoever her opponent will be at All Out. I'm guessing it'll be Nyla Rose again. They've been putting a lot of money behind Nyla Rose in AEW, so I think we might see Nyla Rose, Britt Baker at All Out, but only time will tell. As for this match, again, it wasn't a bad match, and I think that's sort of been the theme for AEW, is not fantastic matches, but good enough average matches to keep the crowd interested, and I felt like that was the overall theme of AEW until we got to the main event, which we will get to that. But first, we got El Idolo being interviewed by Tony Schiavone. But before anything could happen, El Idolo grabbed him and said, listen, this is my brand new executive consultant. And out came, ooh, Chavo. Dun, 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 dun. I wish. It was Chavo Guerrero came out to be the representative of El Idolo, which is quite cool to see that the whole entire Guerrero family getting behind Andrade. He has Vicky in his corner now. He's got Chavo. So that's pretty awesome that they're building up this. It seems like they're building up a nice South American, let's call it that, a Latin American stable coming into AEW, which is full of stables already. And before we could get any action, the triangle death, whatever they call Death Triangle, popped up with Pac and the following representatives of Penta, El Zero, and Rey Fenix rocked up there and said, listen, we're going to take this into our own hands. And yeah, they talked a bit of Spanish amongst each other, which was quite cool. Pac looked a bit confused in all of this. I don't think he speaks much Spanish up in Newcastle. We'll find out, I guess, if you understood any of it. But yeah, a nice little segment just to introduce Chavo to us and introduce this new faction that's going on, which I'm enjoying it. I'm calling it the Guerrero faction. They haven't really got a name yet in the Guerrero family. Who knows? And they'll be going against the Death Triangle group. And yeah, I'm excited to see how this pans out. Probably at Fight of Fallen, maybe at All Out, we get a 3-on-3 match. Who knows? Maybe there's a third member of the Guerrero family we don't know about. We then moved on to another match which sort of happened earlier in the night when Blade sucker punched Orange Cassidy with his brass knuckles, and we subsequently had this match. Orange Cassidy had Chris Stadler at the ring with him, and of course, as always, the Blade had the Bunny with him at the ringside. And what essentially was a really pointless match, if I want to say it like that. A match that didn't need to be on a card like this, and maybe just a teaser for that main event, which we knew was coming next. We were all excited about this, and I think maybe that was just to slow the pace down because we knew we were going to get a frantic match. Maybe that was the thinking behind it. But again, as much of the matches in AEW, this was a very straightforward, above average match. Nothing to talk home about. One thing I can say is that Orange Cassidy is probably the best thing on AEW at the moment. I think the youth movement that they're doing with Cassidy and everybody coming up with that is a centerpiece of AEW. And yeah, look, I love Blade. I think he's very underrated when it comes to a wrestler, but I really do feel like him and Butcher should be in contention more for tag team titles rather than guys, you know, like the Dark Order or things like that. Butcher and Blade have been a very good tandem for AEW, and I feel like they should be high up on the card. But there's a lot of tag teams who I feel should be high up on the card when it comes to AEW. But unfortunately, Nick and his brother Matt, the Jacksons of the Young Bucks, have that sort of monopoly, and it's an arrogant move from them. But I'm not going to talk about that now. We'll leave that for a rant maybe with the major players. Who knows? We can maybe talk about that. But what we're going to talk about in this match specifically was the build-up and then what happened after the match as well, which is a big point. So the build-up to this match, like I said, was very average to the end. The ending was a bit of a shocker. The fact that Orange Cassidy picked up the win after Blade trying to cheat again with the brass knuckles. And yeah, it didn't look like the rivalry was going to continue. It sort of just ended match one. Cassidy and Chris left, and that was it. We then moved backstage, and we got Chris Jericho interview saying, listen, if Nick Gage is going to be my opponent next week, then next week I'm bringing back the Pain Maker. So we're getting Chris Jericho's New Japan Pro Wrestling persona, the man that fought against Kenny Omega in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Let's not forget that. He also took on Okada in that form, so that's quite cool to see. I'm excited. I like the Painmaker persona. In fact, that was his debut in AEW, was as the Painmaker, so that's excited for that one. We then move on to the main event, and what a match. Listen, this was a bloody match. Texas death matches always are, and I think it lived up to the hype that these two had at New Japan Pro Wrestling with their Texas death match, and to have it in Texas with the Texan there was fantastic. So it was just a bloody massacre, and I was loving it. And I'm not a huge fan of over-the-top blood and drama, which is weird because I'm a fan of Mick Foley, and he made death matches famous, him and Terry Funk. But geez, this match was brutally fun. It was so much fun. It started off a bit, easy, going into the crowd, beating up each other there. And then as soon as they hit that spot with the chokeslam on the edge of the chairs, and then you felt the violence ramp up as much as you wanted to ramp up. And we even got chants of AEW, which was quite a little throwback. And the infamous Holy S chant, I can't say it here on YouTube, copyrights and all that sort of stuff, so I can't say that. But you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And then, it just kept going up. I mean, there was Moxley took a fork to Lance Archer's head, which was brutal, and just scraping him. And then, of course, we had to have the board with barbed wire on it. And just to make things a little bit more fun, Moxley put it on top of a table. And he was supposed to get a paradigm shift into it, but Archer countered and chokeslammed him into that, which essentially got him stuck and couldn't get back in the ring for the 10 count. Look, it's a bit of a cheap finish in my opinion, but it's a good finish to protect Moxley from the AEW crowd. Remember, he is AEW, he's not New Japan Pro Wrestling, where Lance Archer's actually signed with New Japan. So it's a bit of a mix there. And I think it was a smart way to get the title off Moxley to free him up for something in AEW rather than keep him as a New Japan Pro Wrestling champion there. It also set up a good fun match we're expecting for next week. I think it was announced at Fight of the Fallen. We're going to have Archer taking on Hikuleo from New Japan Pro Wrestling for the IWGP US Heavyweight Championship. So that would be a fun match to watch. But as for this match, probably the best match of the night. In a match where everything's been above average, this match pulled out all the gears, took it to fifth gear straight away from the start. And what a performance from Moxley and Archer. And possibly the best match of the night, which could have saved Fyter Fest Night 2 from being a bit of a letdown. And with that, we've come to the end of the review. All we have left to do is give you my final thoughts. And, of course, the Vaz scale. That's right. It is let's go with that first. The show, like I said, was above average. All the matches were solid. The backstage segments were all solid. It wasn't anything... We're not going to remember this episode of AEW Dynamite. That's what I'm calling it. I don't know, Fyter Fest Night 2, whatever it is. We're not going to remember it in 20 years' time. We might remember the main event, but we won't remember the other matches. And I think the crowd let this event down a little bit. I don't think they was as enthusiastic as Fyter Fest Night 1. And I think it was the cheap pops that also gets me, you know, the cheap thing of making it a pay-per-view, but not really a pay-per-view by giving it a name. It felt like it was a very cheap tactic to get fans. But that all aside, the show itself was good. It earns itself a 7.5 in the Vaz scale, and mainly thanks to that main event. I can tell you now, if that main event was anything like the rest of the show, that show probably would have gotten a 5, maybe a 5.5. That's how much the main event saved AEW, in my opinion. But of course, you guys can always disagree. If you want to, write down in the comments, tell me what you guys think. Remember to tell your friends, parents, grandparents, lovers, haters, whoever you like. Right here on PWC, we've got everything you want. Reviews, we've got rumors, we've got lists, we've got talking, we've got chatting, we've got a whole bunch of stuff. So guys, come and join us right here on PWC worldwide. We'll get there. For me though, peace and chicken grease.